We have an update on the Toronto Blue Jays and Alek Manoah over here, and the Jays seem to be on the side of not wanting to trade the former Cy Young finalist. So we'll have that on this episode of Jays Digest, as well as a free agency update. We'll have that and much more coming up next. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And excuse the audio for today. I'm using my phone. A bit of a malfunction with my microphone. It will be back tomorrow, hopefully, unless we're having those same issues. But Nick, Alek Manoah and the Toronto Blue Jays are a curious situation over here. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen heading into next season. There's been a lot of talk about him potentially being the focal point of a trade package, or him even being in the rotation as soon as spring training starts. So it's very curious, the situation. We don't know what we're going to get out of Alek Manoah next season. Is he closer to the pitcher that we saw early in his big league career, or is he closer to the pitcher that we saw last season? We're both hoping that it's the former, but it's very tough to say because the stuff has never been exceptional. The stuff has never been off the charts, but he's shown flashes of just pure dominance because of his will to win and his competitiveness on the mound, and he didn't really show those things last year. It could have been a multitude of factors, whether it be the pitch clock or lack of conditioning or just a lack of an approach, really. He looked lost on the mound for the first time in probably his life, and it was very puzzling to us, Nick. But this report here kind of puts to bed the trade talk and him potentially being on another team as soon as next season.
Yeah, we saw trade talks regarding Jorge Polanco before he got dealt. Quick reminder, hit the subscribe button before we get into it. We're on the road to 12,000, but let's just get right into it. Report dropped from Jon Morosi today, and then it also dropped from Scott Mitchell. And this is essentially the report that came out this morning saying that it kind of came out of nowhere. Teams have asked the Blue Jays about Manoah's availability, but sources say the Jays are telling clubs they have no plans to move him. I'm told Manoah's had a very good offseason of workouts. We've obviously seen that on the Instagram posts, and he's expected to be in the Jays rotation. And then if you also rewind back to spring training, this is basically aligns with what Ross Atkins said, which was essentially they want to have him in the rotation. They want him to be that guy fighting for that fifth starter spot. And we've kind of been of the mind of if you're going to trade him, you need to get great value for him. And ultimately, I don't think they were going to be able to do that. As MLB Trade Rumors tweeted out, Blue Jays turning away trade interest. Now, Scott Mitchell kind of has a similar report, but a bit of a different take than Jon Morosi. He wants us to correct this. According to what he's hearing, the Jays are scared to give him away based on his obvious upside. Low ball offers have ensued, but both parties are still open to a change. That means obviously a potential trade. So, Peter, what are your thoughts? And this is kind of what we've been saying the whole time. We don't want the Jays to trade Alek Manoah off of a horrible season before he was a Cy Young contender and finalist. Makes a lot of sense to me. Polanco one would have made a little bit of sense. I think that could have possibly been done. Maybe they explored that, but even that probably wouldn't have been maybe adequate value given what the Blue Jays value him at.
Yeah, and if you're going to trade for Alek Manoah, you better be trading for a former Cy Young finalist. And I think that's what the Blue Jays are looking for. I know he had a terrible season. He was one of the worst starting pitchers in baseball, as evident by those numbers that we're showing over there. But he's 25 years old, and he's making under $1 million a season, and you have him for team control, under team control for another 4 years at minimum. So that in itself is a valuable asset. A starting pitcher that's going to eat innings, that is making under $1 million, very hard to find. They don't grow on trees. And add on top of that, he was a Cy Young finalist and was someone that was dominant and never experienced any sort of turbulence in his baseball career, let alone professional career. So it was new to him. Him struggling that way was new to him, and he just didn't know how to adjust. He got punched in the throat, and he didn't know how to change. He didn't know how to come back from that, and that was the concerning part of last season. I believe that he's made the necessary changes this offseason. I think he's been really putting in the work in the gym, and he looks to a slim down. He looks slimmer than ever, and he looks poised for a bounce-back season. And I honestly think the Blue Jays are underselling him here. I don't know if they want him to compete for the fifth starter spot. They want him to compete for one of the top of the rotation spots, because when it's all said and done in 2 or 3 years' time, he might be the only one left over out of the current crop of starters that the Blue Jays have. Chris Bassett is going to be off the books in 2 years. Kevin Gausman, how many more years of elite pitching does he have left? Remains to be seen. It wouldn't shock me if he has 4 or 5 in him. But Yusei Kikuchi is a free agent at the end of this season. Jose Barrios he's young. He's still going to stick around in that rotation for a while. But that just proves my point. Alek Manoah was supposed to be a mainstay alongside Ricky Tiedemann, and I don't think they want to ruffle his feathers anymore. So they're going to give him a real shot out of spring training. I wouldn't be shocked if he's the fifth starter out of spring training, but I would not be shocked if he moves his way up the ranks and he's the third or maybe even the second starter towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, his ceiling is as high as anyone, and selling low on a guy like this, I mean, you mentioned it. We've discussed it tons. A lot of their starters, you just went through them all. Aside from Jose Barrios, we have him locked up for 6 more years, 6 or 5. But the big thing is that he is our future regarding our starting rotation. Him, Ricky Tiedemann, a lot of these guys, and he's one that if you gave up on him early, obviously to help in this little short 2-year window we discuss, we don't have many great starting pitchers down the pipeline. There's some, but aside from Alek Manoah, Ricky Tiedemann, like Manoah's a guy that obviously horrible season last year. You can look at on the left there, almost a 6 ERA, one of the worst qualified pitchers in baseball. But I think next year he's going to be back, and ultimately that will be the big thing. But this is a good report. I'm happy about this. We kind of expected it. Unless you were getting a huge haul back that would put them and propel them to World Series favorites, they were going to keep them because, let's be honest here too, if Ross Atkins traded away Alek Manoah, the potential for disaster just from the optics of that for him could be horrible just because of how good he could be for another team. Any final thoughts on that before we move on to a quick update regarding the rest of the free agency?
Yeah, I just think this is the worst possible time to trade him. You look at the potential that you could get out of him, and it exceeds the value of anything that you would have gotten back in a trade. And even the Jorge Polanco stuff, I thought that would have been a major overpay by the Toronto Blue Jays if they were going to swap Manoah for Polanco, who's an impending free agent. Look, he's got value, and even if he doesn't regain that 2.5 ERA or 2.24 ERA that he had in his really good season there, he still could be valuable. If he approaches a 3.5 to a 4, and what were we saying with Jose Barrios coming into this year? If he's around a 3.5 or a 4, that contract is going to be worth it because he doesn't miss starts, and he's going to be on that bump every fifth day. You could say the same thing with Alek Manoah. He's very durable. Approached 200 innings in his Cy Young finalist season. So that's very impressive, especially for a 24-year-old and now going to be 25, maybe heading into his age 26 season here. I see the upside, and it would be catastrophic to sell him at his lowest possible value. There's no way he could replicate what he did last year. There's no way, especially with the way that he's been approaching this season. I know that we all want to rag on the guy, and we all want to say he doesn't have the stuff to be a number 1, and that could be true, but there's nothing wrong with being a number 3 or a number 4 in a world where you could never have too much pitching, in a sense.
Yeah, and the Jays have one of the best pitching coaches and staffs in baseball, both actual of the staff and the coaches as well. So let's know your thoughts on that. And let's move on now to some big free agency news. Now, this is more so about who they're targeting. It's more so about how they're going to be utilizing some of their players. Also from Scott Mitchell, basically going here. And this is kind of the article reacting to the Justin Turner trade, which, again, like we mentioned yesterday, I'm liking it more and more each day. He is going to be speaking to the media tomorrow, so I'll have you covered with that. But he basically goes on to say that the Jays are in bargain hunting mode right now, which always allows room for a different answer. Are they done? They still have Cody Bellinger, Matt Chapman out there. But, Peter, it doesn't seem like they're going to make a huge move unless Scott Boras' demands come down, which is the same thing we've been talking about all season. It seems like, obviously, most likely, what Ben Nicholson is saying with Shadavidi is that they probably won't be making another move. But if their prices come down, the Jays are still in a position to sign one of these big guys. So I don't know if you think it's going to happen. It's obviously a slim chance. We're not saying it's likely to happen, but it's kind of the same spot. It doesn't seem like the Justin Turner signing changed the fact that if they come down to Ross Atkins in the front offices and the ownership's number, they will still make a push for him.
I think a lot of teams have that same approach because these demands are astronomical, and $200 million, $250 million for Cody Bellinger. A very good player, don't get me wrong, and I've wanted him from the start of the offseason on this Blue Jays team, but for $250 million, especially now that you've added Justin Turner and you've kind of addressed a little bit of those lineup concerns, it would be a luxury and maybe not a luxury that you're willing to spend $250 million for. And I think every team is kind of in that same boat right now. I could see the Giants spending a boatload of money on Matt Chapman, but apart from them, I don't really see many serious suitors for those two specific guys. So I think the Jays are still in on them. They're doing their due diligence. And what are they going to do? Not play next year because they didn't get $250 million? No, they're going to have to come down eventually. And when they do, I think that's when Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro are going to pounce on the opportunity. And maybe get them under the radar when we all thought it wasn't possible.
Yep, and I mean I'm happy with that. Either way, the offseason's been okay, lackluster for some, but the Jays still have the flexibility. So if you're still of that Cody Bellinger and Matt Chapman camp, there is a chance, albeit maybe one team will step up and pick those up. But that'll wrap up the video. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you tomorrow.